Alright guys, so this is the first video for Unit 1. It's called Types of Numbers. This should all be a review, like a lot of it you'll already know, be familiar with. It's just kind of a easy thing to start off with. As we go through this, even if I go to another page, you can keep going in your notebook. You can probably fit it all on one page, making sure it looks nice as we go along. Okay, so the first type of number that we need to be familiar with is whenever we talk about the word integers. Okay, that's going to come up a lot. Essentially, what an integer is, it's a whole number, so no decimals or fractions. Okay, an integer is just a whole number. They can be positive, they could be negative, or 0. Okay, so those are all integers. And just the basics today, like again, I said you should already know how to do this, but it's just somewhere to start off with. When you're adding and subtracting integers, here's where a lot of mistakes actually happen on like quizzes and tests. They'll get the answer right, except it's off by like a negative or something like that. Like the answer was 2 and they wrote -2 or vice versa. So very careful to make sure you guys are paying attention to signs. When you're adding and subtracting, for example, like 15 minus 21, there's two ways you can kind of picture it in your head. You can kind of picture a number line, right, where it's saying we're starting at 15 and then we're subtracting. Subtraction means we go left. Subtraction is left, addition is right. Okay, so we're subtracting. Okay, so we're taking away. So what's happening is we're actually on a number line going left 21 spaces. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't want to count 21 spaces. So this is kind of a visual way to do it. Another way to kind of picture in your head is you have two types of numbers, right? You have negative numbers and positive numbers. In this question, you have 15 positive numbers. Sorry. Let me go back to there. 15 positive numbers, and you have 21 negative numbers. Subtraction and negative are the same thing. Okay? So whenever you have opposites like this, you have to subtract them. You have to take one away from the other. So off to the side, you could do 21 minus 15. I want to know how far apart are they, and it kind of changes the way it looks. So 21 minus 15, you can do some old school subtraction, you get 6. However, 6 is not the correct answer, right? Which one had the higher number? Well, there was more negatives than there were positives, okay? Because there were more negatives, our final answer, the leftovers, must also be negative. Okay, so be careful of that. Okay, the other thing you want to make sure be very careful of is whenever you're dealing with like back-to-back symbols. For example, if the question looks like this, where you have 7 minus a -6. Now, whenever you have these back-to-back symbols like this, you have to kind of simplify it before you can do anything. Hopefully you already remember this, but 2 negatives always make a positive. Whenever you have a positive and a negative back-to-back, that makes a negative. And then positive, positive makes positive. This is kind of your key. And remember, for adding and subtracting, these signs are consecutive. Okay? Meaning they're right next to each other. So what's actually happening in this question is when you see this, 2 negatives actually simplify to a positive. So the actual question is 7 plus 6, which is easy, 13. Okay, so be careful of that whenever you see those back-to-back signs. It could also look like this. They could use some parentheses where it's like 15 plus a negative 18. Again, you have back-to-back signs. Okay, a positive and a negative. When you combine them, make a negative. Bring things down. So our actual question is 15 minus 18. Okay, so off to the side, if you need to, you can always go 18 minus 15 is 3. But there were more negatives, right? Negative 18, that's a bigger number. So our leftovers are negative. Okay. Also, because we're in this virtual setting, you guys have the advantage of you guys can use a calculator. Make sure, as long as you're making sure to enter it in correctly on your calculator. Okay. So that's adding, subtracting. Multiplying and dividing is actually easier. Okay. So for multiplying and dividing, kind of the same rules apply, except the symbols don't have to be consecutive. So in other words, a question could look like this, where it's 5 times a negative 3. Okay, so we have a positive number times a negative number, and that same chart still applies. A positive number times a positive number stays positive. Positive number times a negative number, the negative always wins, and double negatives make a positive. Okay, so that same chart still applies, but these ones are not consecutive. They're not back to back. Okay, so positive 5 times negative 3, well, 5 times 3 is 15, and a positive number times a negative number is negative. Almost easier than adding and subtracting is. Okay, another one to show you is division. Sometimes we'll write it as division as fractions because they're the exact same thing. So like negative 27 divided by negative 3. Okay, remember division, so you follow this chart. So you follow the chart and you see these negatives, a negative divided by a negative, they cancel each other out and make positive. So this question is actually saying, what is 27 divided by 3? Which is 9, positive 9. Okay? Again, because we're in a virtual setting, you can use calculators, but just make sure you're entering it in very, very carefully. Number one mistake is that students get the correct number, but the sign is wrong. Like they're missing the positive, they're missing the negative. So be very, very careful. Okay? At this point, I would like you guys to try some questions on your own. Okay? So find some space, and the questions I would like you guys to try, we'll write them down here. There's 4 of them. Okay, number 1, 18 minus 32. Number 2, 21 plus a negative 8. Number 3, negative 7 times negative 6. And number 4, negative 100 divided by 20. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, do these questions in your notebook, and then come back to the video and hit play, and you can kind of check your answers. All right, guys, you can go ahead and check your answers. Make sure to fix mistakes, and if you're not sure how we got one of these answers, make sure to ask me about it during class, and we can go over it then. Okay.